Party people, it's Miss Saxon. Today we'll be doing Distance Learning Week 3, Day 3, Community Workers, Mae Jemison. You will need the KWL chart, a new one, and the article on Mae Jemison. I will include both of these with the assignment link, so you can just press this when you go to Microsoft Teams and get your assignment. Before we read the article, let's fill out our KWL chart. We read last lesson about up in space. Some things that we learned were astronauts are people whose job it is to go to space. We also learned that astronauts help us learn about space. They use spaceships to get to space. So what do we wonder about this new article? Well, we may wonder, who is Mae Jemison? So let's go ahead and write that in the what I wonder column. And we really, if you want to also think of other things, you might think, what does she do? So let's read the article and find out. Have you ever thought about going to space? Perhaps you'd like to be an astronaut when you grow up. Mae Jemison knows what it's like being in space. She is the first African American woman astronaut. When Mae was in school, she loved to study science. She had wanted to visit space since she was a child. Mae made her dreams come true. In 1992, Mae flew into space with 6 other astronauts. She became the first African American woman in space. But Mae is not only an astronaut, she is also a doctor and a dancer. It seems like there's nothing Mae can't do. It's no surprise that many people look up to her. So here is my KWL chart. I wrote the questions here. Who is Mae Jemison? And what does she do? If we go back to the article and we look at the second paragraph, it says Mae Jemison knows what it's like being in space. She is the first African American woman astronaut. And we can underline, she is the first African American woman astronaut. What does she do? Well, we know she's an astronaut, and we kind of already know what astronauts do. We learned earlier that they study space and they help us learn about space. So let's make our question a little bit more specific to the story about Mae Jemison. And maybe we can ask, when did she go to space? And maybe we want to know, other than being an astronaut, what else does she do? So let's read on. When Mae was in school, she loved to study science. She had wanted to visit space since she was a child. Mae made her dreams come true. In 1992, Mae flew into space with 6 other astronauts. She became the first African American woman in space. So we can go right here, and it says in 1992, she flew into space with 6 other astronauts. So when did she go to space? It was in 1992. What else does she do? But Mae is not only an astronaut, she's also a doctor and a dancer. So that would be our answer for what else does she do. Let's take the answers that we found and write them in the column right here of what we learned. Who is Mae Jemison? She was the first African American woman astronaut. What does she do? Well, we kind of answered those two in the same sentence. What she does and who she is. She's an astronaut, and she was the first African American woman astronaut. When did she go to space? She went to space in 1992. Let's write complete sentences, especially if you're in the first and second grade. And the last one was, what else does she do? So we learned here that not only is she an astronaut, she is also a doctor and a dancer. So that's the information that we learned. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your paper, your KWL chart, and you're going to fill out the L from the questions that we learned. This is what your KWL chart should look like. And while I was going over it, I realized that I had not gotten everything exactly correct, and that's okay, because when we're proofreading or we're editing, we look for mistakes that we made and we go back and correct them. That's a part of the writing process. So actually, she wasn't the first African American astronaut. She was the first African American woman astronaut. So I stuck that in here, right here. I also added the two questions that we wanted to know that was specific to Mae Jemison. So when did she go to space, and what else did she do? And we have the answers here. She flew to space in 1992, and she also is a doctor and a dancer. So for our next video, we actually are going to be on week 3, day 4. You're going to go back to your day 2 form, which was underline the major points. And then if you see in the red there, we already filled that out with the article we used up in space. And we're going to fill out the next column about Mae Jemison. But I want to challenge you to not pick astronaut, because it's going to give you the same answers that we had here. So let's talk about the other things that she actually is. She's also a doctor and she's also a dancer. So you can pick either one of those, even though a dancer is really not a community worker. You can pick either one and fill out, what does a doctor or dancer do? Where do they work? What tools does a doctor or dancer use? And then what uniform, if any, does a doctor or dancer wear? So I'm gonna challenge everybody to either pick doctor or dancer and fill out this column for our next video. All right, see you in the next time.